Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Marble Arch Synagogue for welcoming us this evening, to Rabbi Epstein, to Stéphane, to Gina, and especially to Sarah Raiden. Il va y avoir beaucoup de remerciements, il faut être patient. I am Sophie Weisenfeld, founder of the cultural think tank Hexagon Society. With the blessing of the rabbi, I have the authorization to speak in French after. C'est avec une grande émotion que je prends la parole ce soir. Il y a 9 ans, presque, jour pour jour, je lançais cet institut grâce à Bernard-Henri Levy, qui m'avait fait le cavode d'être le tout premier à accepter de faire une conférence pour Hexagon Society, qui n'avait alors qu'une existence un peu métaphysique, juste dans mes rêves. Il a réalisé mon rêve. C'était à l'occasion de son livre magnifique « L'esprit du judaïsme » à la Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue le 22 mars 2016. Je lançais cette nouvelle aventure intellectuelle grâce à notamment Freddy Salem, que j'aperçois dans la salle et qui a été d'un soutien immense. L'idée était de créer des ponts culturels entre une Angleterre post-Brexit et la France, donc l'Europe, consciente que même si le Royaume-Uni devait quitter les frontières politiques de l'Europe, il resterait toujours lié culturellement. Je reconnais des visages devenus familiers depuis. Le monde d'hier, pas celui de Sebag, mais celui de 2016, est très différent, hélas, du monde d'aujourd'hui. Le monde, 9 ans plus tard, semble être rentré dans une nuit blanche sans fin, dans les ténèbres au sens talmudique, à savoir l'extinction de l'esprit prophétique. Revenir à une forme de spiritualité absolue semblerait être la solution. La démarche intellectuelle en est une, comme celle des prophètes. Bernard-Henri Levy et Sebag Montefirore sont nos prophètes modernes, nos Jonas, nos Moïse modernes. Ils ont chacun été visionnaires dans leurs combats respectifs et avec toujours cette démarche intellectuelle propre au judaïsme. Bernard-Henri Levy est un juif hybride, un juif lévinassien, un juif solaire, le juif solaire d'Albert Cohen, avec un peu de Kessel, de Malraux et de Lord Byron. Bernard s'est mobilisé sans relâche pour le peuple kurde, pour l'Europe contre le Brexit, pour l'Ukraine contre Poutine, contre toute forme de populisme, d'extrémisme, de discrimination bien sûr, et bien sûr contre l'antisémitisme, avec de nombreux séjours dans le Kurdistan irakien entre Erbil et Mossoul, puis sur le front en Ukraine dans le Donbass dont il revient il y a quelques jours. Sebag est le juif de la connaissance absolue. Il a quant à lui œuvré et travaillé sur des œuvres majeures, énormes, sur la Russie, sur Jérusalem. Plus récemment, The World, une histoire de plus de 1300 pages de l'évolution de l'Homo sapiens à l'invasion de l'Ukraine par Poutine. Une véritable encyclopédie. Quelques mots pour finir sur Hexagon Society. Pour ceux qui ne me connaissent pas encore, je suis Sophie Wiesenfeld, docteur en droit, avocate, activiste pour les droits de l'homme. Hexagon Society est née de cette certitude, de cette conviction que la culture est un vecteur de paix, une arme diplomatique. Depuis la création en mars 2016, nous avons fait la promotion et la production d'événements culturels altruistes et engagés. Nous nous sommes mobilisés sur des sujets comme la cause kurde, la guerre en Ukraine, le droit des femmes en Iran, la montée de l'antisémitisme et récemment, depuis le 7 octobre, la lutte contre la radicalisation dans les universités avec des partenariats avec le King's College de Londres et en discussion avec la London School of Economics. De nombreuses personnalités sont intervenues, Bernard-Henri Levy à plusieurs reprises, le président François Hollande, Manuel Valls, Jacques Attali, des écrivains français et anglais comme Douglas Murray, Simon Sebag bien entendu, prochainement le prix Goncourt, Kamel Daoud, des avant-premières de films, etc. Des événements aussi dans l'art avec Simon Depury, Tadeusz Ropac. Nous avons levé plusieurs milliers de pentes pour les reverser à des œuvres caritatives selon l'idée que nous associons toujours notre contenu culturel à des charités. Nous avons lancé, il y a une initiative il y a un an pile, suite au choc bien sûr du 7 octobre, mais aussi suite à un autre choc, celui de l'audition des présidentes d'universités américaines de Harvard, Penn et MIT, où nous avons entendu que l'appel au meurtre des Juifs n'était pas nécessairement sanctionnable, qu'il dépendait du contexte, le désormais fameux « it depends of the context ». Face à ces réponses, nous avons réalisé à quel point les milieux éducatifs ont évolué aux États-Unis sous l'influence des milieux islamo-gauchistes, même constat, hélas, en Grande-Bretagne. Nous avons donc lancé un programme de fellowship où une bourse est accordée à des écrivains, des journalistes, des activistes pour accompagner leur travail sur Israël, sur la lutte contre l'antisémitisme, l'obscurantisme et surtout contre la radicalisation dans les universités. Notre premier fellowship, je vais terminer bientôt. Notre premier fellowship a été accordé à Douglas Murray, que nous avons reçu l'an dernier précisément dans cette même synagogue et qui a été le premier récipiendaire. Ce fellowship a pour but d'accompagner les lauréats dans leur travail sur le terrain, les aider pour leur sécurité et leur voyage. Après Douglas Murray, il y a eu Mossab Hassan Youssef, qui même si sa conférence a hélas été annulée en septembre dernier pour des raisons de sécurité, a reçu ce fellowship et d'autres à venir. Depuis plus d'un an, nous assistons à une radicalisation de la société anglaise, notamment dans les universités, au nom de la liberté d'expression absolue, au nom de la possibilité qu'être antisioniste est une opinion, pas de l'antisémitisme. Il n'existe pas de constitution écrite au Royaume-Uni, pas de laïcité à la française qui quelque part nous protège. La liberté d'expression est une liberté, mais pas un droit. C'est cet ensemble de questions sur lesquelles nous allons nous mobiliser avec notre programme de fellowship. Je profite de ce discours qui arrive enfin à sa fin pour appeler à l'unité au sein de la communauté juive anglaise. Je remercie tous mes partenaires et je vous invite vite vraiment à l'unité parce qu'on s'est rendu compte qu'on était trop tous dispersés et peut-être qu'on devrait se réunir comme en France autour d'un CRIF afin de ne pas faire cavalier seul. En ces temps sombres, l'union fait la différence. Donc je remercie We Believe in Israel, La Page, Yoshi, Meir Panim et ceux qui m'aident en day-to-day dans Hexagone alors qu'ils ont déjà un travail, Théo, Sarah Eden, Yael et bien sûr Samuel. Merci beaucoup pour votre patience.
Thank you very much. Just to say, we're delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be here. Lovely to we've known of each other for a very, very long time, so it's lovely to meet for the first time just here in this beautiful synagogue. So thank you very much for having us. There's a lot to talk about. We are living in a world of utter turbulence. So many things have happened even today. Putin and Trump have been talking. The war has started again in Gaza. So we're going to discuss many things, and we've got 1 hour to do it. So let us begin. But with all this excitement, I must say that I will certainly not be able to sleep tonight. So let's begin with the book, Nuit Blanche, which is about insomnia. We are both, I think, fellow insomniacs. Tell me what it is like to be an insomniac, and tell me what happens when you see the lights come on in the Élysée Palace in the middle of the night.
That's two different questions. About the second one, yes, I can observe the light on, the light off in the office of my neighbor. And it is generally the best time to have sort of exchange. But I cannot say more than what I say in the book. About insomnia, my deep belief is that not being able to sleep any longer, which is my case, is a disgrace and it's a chance. And it's even a duty. My conviction in this book is that it is the three things. A disgrace for sure, being unable to sleep creates very strange, ghostly feelings, very terrible experiences and so on. But I think that it is also a chance because you can work and write and so on. And I really believe that in a time of chaos, of even collapse, the one we are facing, it is a sort of duty, not to sleep. Insomnia is a metaphor of vigilance, of duty for all of us, those who speak loudly, those who speak silently, those duty of being there, duty of bearing witness, duty of not disconnecting from the world. And I think really that in these times which we are facing with so many events, as you just said.
Who, in that role as a sort of sentinel, as a custodian of morality, who are your heroes? I mean, Émile Zola, I guess, with J'accuse, is the inventor of the modern public intellectual or literary sentinel, moral custodian. Who are your heroes in your writing?
No, the first sentinels who don't accept to sleep when they see the world in which they live are the prophets of the Torah. They are real insomniac. Jeremiah, Isaiah, Jonah, Ezekiel, they don't sleep. They really believe that if you want to be really here for the other, if you want to be open to his suffering, if you have not to close your eyes, this idea that there is a duty of not closing the eyes, that there is a sin of being blind, that being blind is a sin. This is the old idea of the oldest intellectuals who are the prophets. They really don't sleep.
Since we were talking a little earlier about your neighbor in the Elysee, we're going to jump around here. I make no apology for that, but just to jump back to that, Macron has suddenly, I think we all agree that Macron has suddenly exercised or displayed a sort of a great statesmanship in the last few weeks, particularly, and you were old friends with him, I think. You've known every French president since Giscard in the 70s. We now have Macron, who's suddenly become a sort of titanic figure in Europe, I think, and I think he's going to provide amazing leadership. Which of the presidents you've known, who do you most admire? And then let's get on to Macron and the moment we are in at the moment, if we may.
I would not say friend. I'm not friend with Macron. I would not dare to say that, and in fact I am not. And I've not been friend with any of the presidents which I knew. More important than being a friend, I think that again we have all citizens the right and the duty to address our president. And when you have the chance to live in the country of Émile Zola, there is a right of interpellation, a right of addressing. So this is what I do with since my first meeting with the president, which was nearly 50 years ago with Giscard d'Estaing. When I have the chance to meet them, it is on duty, not for friendship. First of all, about Macron, you are right. One of the properties of the historical moments, the moments where really the world is like a huge earthquake, is that it reveals the characters. Historical moment reveal the weak characters and reveal the strong characters. And sometimes people whom you believed to be weak appear to be strong. In Ukraine, for example, President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people in general, whom everybody believed to be just a comedian, and not such a good one. Suddenly, few hours after the huge invasion of his country by Russia, appeared to be a great man, a great little man, little by size and great by character. This famous sentence which he addressed, this famous reply to the president of America at that time, who offered him an exit from Ukraine, he said, Mr. President, I don't need a taxi, I need some fusils, I need some weapons. This, out of blue sky, revealed a great man, a great Churchillian man. So Macron, something of this sort happened. In these dark times in which we are, with President Trump appearing to be closer to his enemies than to his friends, betraying his, or seeming to betray all the allies of America, suddenly Macron did take the challenge and took the lead, and appears as one of those who take the torch, the torch of free world, defense of liberty, and so on. So it is him, and it is the moment. A moment reveals women and men.
Yeah, and also a moment can make a giant. A giant moment can make a titanic figure. I think Nehru said something like that when he said, we're not great men, it's the moment that makes us. But of course it tests them. And I do agree that I think the great moment with Zelensky was the great speech he gave. I think it's the greatest speech of our time, when he just said, I'm here. And he appeared with the defense minister and his other ministers, and we said, we're staying in Kiev. Now, you've just come from Kiev right now. What is the atmosphere now? How are they coping with the advances on the front, the military pressure, and the political pressure from Trump and Vance?
Yeah, the fact is that when Trump received Zelensky in the Oval Office, when they had this so disgraceful conversation, when Trump tried to humiliate Zelensky, I saw the moment on screen, live, with Ukrainian soldiers in Pokrovsk, which is on the very most advanced point on the front line, Pokrovsk in Donbass. I was surrounded by combatants who few minutes before and few minutes after had been and will be back on fight against the Russians. And it was a moment which I will never forget. The men who were around me were full of astonishment, sorrow, and pride. Astonishment because they were mesmerized by what they saw. America, who has always been, most of the time, which is supposed to be the fatherland of liberty, suddenly treating that way one of the Churchillian figures of our time, it was more than a surprise. It was really mesmerizing for them. Sorrow. I saw these men crying, their eyes full of tears, because they love America. They have the feeling to defend, to be the best advocates of the Western creed and of the American creed. So to experience this betrayal, this abandonment was for them a source of huge sadness. They were sad. And I was with them since 2 days in very difficult conditions, in the cold, in the snow, and under fire. They were more brutalized and more sad seeing these images than being on front line a few hours before. And number 3, what did happen immediately was pride. They were proud to see their president facing the assault, behaving so well, not losing his temper, replying with wisdom and cold blood and toughness, firmness to this assault of the vice president, the American president. And this was the third image which I collected. This great moment of patriotic pride. And they were probably as proud of their president as they were 3 years ago when they saw him, as you well said, in the streets of Kiev, surrounded by his ministers and commanders, under shelling, with attempts of assassination which were already programmed and on the way. It was probably the same for these guys who survived the 3 years of total invasion of Ukraine. So it was a very strange moment, per se, and for me, and probably for them.
I mean, you've been to many extraordinary places, you've seen many people. Do you think, does Zelensky rank right up at the top?
For sure, yeah. He's really, and I say that all the more because frankly I did not expect that much more than most of the commentators. I met him before he was elected. I met him a few days before his election, at a moment where most of the Western observers and leaders believed that he could lose. And I met him privately in Kiev, in a restaurant. And I was already stricken by something. He was much more than just a comic. He was much more than a comedian playing games with politics. But then he won a huge victory, or conversely to what President Trump said. He's not only democratically elected, but he's probably the best democratically elected of the Western presidents, 75% of the re-election. But his mandate was so-so, and suddenly when the war appeared, something occurred with this man, the encounter of a man and of a moment, the encounter of a personal destiny and a collective event sometimes produces an incredible eclair, a strike. And this is what happened with Zelensky. And suddenly I saw him various times between the election and the war, and he never really inhabited his role. He was not so comfortable with being a president till the war, till the invasion, and suddenly he fully inhabited his dress. This is a very strange moment. De Gaulle, before being De Gaulle, was already De Gaulle, I suppose. Churchill was already Churchill in a way, even if the event revealed him, of course. Zelensky became Zelensky with this moment of bravery, courage, challenge to the huge forces, and so on. And this strike inflamed his people, but inflamed also the torch of liberty all over Europe. It was a spark which inflamed. At that time, if we are honest, Europe was sleepy. Europe did not always believe herself in her own values. Who really knew the meaning of freedom, resistance, and so on? And to these old words of the European tribe, to speak like the French poet Stéphane Mallarmé, Zelensky gave back a meaning. He gave back a meaning to the old words of the tribe. We forgot, he reminded.
And do you think in an ironic way, perhaps with the law of unintended consequences, Donald Trump is also, in a way, in a very strange way, doing Europe a great favor in finding ourselves, in teaching us to defend ourselves, in teaching us to appreciate our freedom and our culture, and the importance of defending what we think is important?
Again, both the Trump moment reveals everyone's character. he reveals in some of the European leaders' weakness, cowardice, appeasement, and this moment reveals in others, sometimes unexpected, greatness and bravery. We will see the two, and in the coming weeks, we will see the two face to face. Those who lack character and those who reveal their character. And it will be a sort of paradoxical product of the Trump event, yes, for sure. Trump is an event. Invasion of Ukraine is an event. October 7 is an event with a capital E. It's not frequent, but we have in these last years, a series of events with capital E, which is not so frequent in the history of mankind. Generally, we have one event every, I don't know, half century or decade maybe. But this repetition of big events, mesmerizing the world and creating this process of revealing a character, this is the characteristic of this moment.
But Trump, to talk about Trump, he's such a sort of fascinating character. He's so different, in some ways revolutionary. Just to watch him in the Oval Office holding these apprentice-like press conferences for hours, inventing things, throwing off crazy ideas. How do you analyze him as a statesman, as an event, if you like? What does he mean?
I don't think that the press conferences in the Oval Office are events. They are just TV reality, as he himself says. Remember that at the end of his insulting moment with Zelensky, the conclusion made by him was, at least, it will be a big moment of television. So President Trump knows what is television moments. He does not know what it is, what events are. But he produces events. But he is not conscious of that. When he is with his partner, Elon Musk, and the little boy of Elon Musk in the Oval Office, again, it's a moment of television. And Zelensky, in a way, when he entered in his own mandate, he was also a showman. But sometimes a showman becomes a character, and sometimes he is just a showman. So Trump, for me, is certainly more a showman than a great man. But for sure, he's reorganized the very happening of his presence is redistributing, respreading the cards of the world. And when he said to Zelensky, "You don't have the cards," this was what he meant. He was in fact giving distributing the cards. That's true everywhere.
And in the deal making between Putin and Trump that we're seeing today in their conversation and already before, this contains matters of war and peace, but also a lot of business.
That's why I tell you that I don't believe one second that we can have with the President of America the same sort of surprise which we have with the President of Ukraine, President of France today, even Prime Minister of Israel, who is not my friend, but who appeared to be a real chief of war. These sort of things will not happen with Trump because he is doing business, not history. Today, there was this telephone conference between him and Putin. I'm pretty sure that most of the conversation was about business. And not business in Ukraine, as the press says, but I suspect and I even believe that the hidden part of the plan concerns Russia. This is the real deals which are on process between Putin and Trump. So, making deals is not making history. Making business with a dictator is not making great politics. Being more sweet with your historical enemy than with your sweetest friend, Canada, being more close to Putin than to Canada, is to betray your real historical role. And I feel that this is Mr. Donald Trump today.
Let's talk a little bit about, since we're in a synagogue, let's talk about, and you've written so much on this, let's talk about what it means to be a Jew. And one of the great challenges I think we all face is that to be a Jew in 2025 and to know how to live as a Jew in 2025 is different from knowing how to live as a Jew in 2022. Or how do we navigate that? How have things changed after the great event of October 7th, when I feel that there was a golden age of Jewishness between, say, 1948 and October 7th, maybe, and that period is now over. But how do we live in this period?
I would say that I am, and you probably are, and all of you are certainly, we are the same Jew as we were before October 7th. Being a Jew is something so old, engraved in such great books, that I don't think it is affected by any sort of event. And we know from, I don't know, Maharal of Prague till Franz Rosenzweig, that to be a Jew means to have a part of to Jonathan Sachs, by the way, that being a Jew means having a part of yourself out of history. You inhabit. A Jew is someone who inhabits a place which is in and out of history, which is in and out of the being. So no event can affect that. And I'm sure that, I know that Elie Wiesel, Jonathan Sachs, Claude Lanzmann, to quote those who are no longer here, were Jews in the same way as their old masters were. This is one thing. The other thing is that, of course, October 7th changed everything in our way of life. It revealed something. It revealed that Israel, which was supposed to be, which was built to be a safe haven for the Jews, was not a safe haven, no longer. It revealed that there was no place in the world where Jews were safe. It revealed that far from being on the decline, anti-Semitism was on the increasing. It revealed that there was a huge part of the world, from high levels of power to the street, where there was a hidden joy to hate Jews, hidden, which suddenly appeared in the light. All that was revealed by October 7th. As for myself, when I was in Israel on October 8th, the day after, I rushed to Israel, but I saw from far the images in London of so-called pro-Palestinian demonstrations. The same images in Paris, in America. Before any retaliation from Israel, before Israel reacted, there was demonstrations in London, in Paris, in New York, expressing solidarity with the killers.
And already accusing Israel of genocide and killing babies.
Accusing Israel of being the true criminal and to be the real suspect and guilty one. Rewarding the killers of the Hamas for being fighters and resistance, and saying that this absolutely unique event of October 7 was part of a long war of liberation. So, what all the Jews in the world discovered was that there was a sort of repressed hate, repressed by law, repressed by many things which were there and which burst out. There was an outburst of hate. And this, for me, was a shock, honestly. I wrote about anti-Semitism many times in my life. I studied the nature of anti-Semitism, where it comes from, the Jewish form it takes. But I did not expect that. I did not expect demonstrations in the streets expressing the pleasure and the joy and the solidarity with those who had just committed the most barbaric rapes, for example, which we ever heard. This was October 7th. I was in the kibbutz of Kfar, one of the kibbutzim who were the theater of this massacre, Kfar Aza. And I collected some of the first testimonies of the rapes, for example. And one testimony especially of revealing a rape with sexual violence plus different physical tortures plus killing in the process, a description which was absolutely totally believable, of course, and true, but it was nearly unbelievable. So, and this I told it immediately. I wrote about that, and the reply of a big part of the world was, they are the guilty ones. The killers were, you have to understand that they did not act out of context, and so on and so on. So there is no, I think, no Jew who is not aware of this new climate, which is even for someone who went through many things like me, is a real surprise and a real new theater for our living.
And of course, one of the interesting things is to see also how Jews react to this. And there's some Jews who immediately believe that there must be some sin in Israel's past, in its history, and there are other Jews who are defiant. But surely the art is, as you imply, that we must just be ourselves and never forget that we are being ourselves.
Yeah, really, what struck me when I was during these dark days, when I was in Israel, was the solidarity and the unity of in the first few months, and in a way till now. In Israel, you have, of course, debates. You have debate today for example, at this very moment, about the opportunity of or not to strike Gaza again and so on. But on the targets of the war, on the meaning of the historical moments, there is no real debate between the people who gather every Saturday on Hostage Square and the right-wing political parties. I really believe that. I spoke on Hostage Square a few months ago. Most of the people with whom I was and whom I addressed were anti-Netanyahu, but on the general meaning of what happened, on the real nature of Hamas, on the real extent, importance of the threat, about the existential threat which is imposed to Israel, there was no real disagreement. No real discussion.
I guess there are two things I want to ask about Israel and Jewishness. When 10 million Jews, 9 million Jews live in Israel, which is essentially half the world's Jewish population now, is there any real difference between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism?
The question is not how many millions live here or there. The question is that anti-Semitism in this moment, but not now, since 50 years, cannot find any other way to express itself and to gather world approval and to gather big crowds than anti-Zionism. It's not only, people always ask, is anti-Zionism anti-Semitism? The real question is, can anti-Semitism today be something else than anti-Zionism? If someone deeply hates you or me and Jews, he will, if he goes in the street saying the Jews are bad people because they crucified Jesus Christ, nobody will listen. He will be considered as a fool. If somebody comes and saying that Jews are a different race, a different ethnicity, he will be called a racist. It will not work. It will just not work. If they say Jews are plutocrats, it will work a little better, but it will not make really a success. If the same guy, if he wants to be applauded, to be followed, to make a crowd, and to obtain a huge scream of fury against Jews, there is no other way than saying Jews under the banner of Israel or with complicity with Israel commit genocide, practice apartheid, are people colonizing another people and so on. If you say that, then you have millions of people following you with good consciousness. This is the real way I would formulate the thing. And it was always like that. When, in the time of Enlightenment, for example, 2 centuries ago, same thing. It was no longer fashionable and no longer working to say that Jews killed God, but to say that Jews invented God, that Jews were the Jewish land, were the fatherland of the disgusting Christ. This was enlightenment against this worked. And you had a lot of people in France, in UK, who embraced this way of thinking. So anti-Semitism is a sort of devilish hate, which is since millenaries searching the right glove to stranglehold, the right glove. And at this moment, the good glove to put the hand of the killer is the glove of anti-Zionism. Yes?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, it's a bacteria that's constantly mutating, looking for a new body to inhabit. And
A new glove to strangle.
yeah. Tell me, I mean, you, as a young philosopher, you made your name reacting against the Marxist, Leninist, leftist world that dominated viewpoint, that dominated French letters and French intellectual society. Did you spot in the last 20 years the capture of Western academia by decolonization, by this new neo-Marxist decolonization ideology that has proved so disastrous and so dominating since October 7th? Did you spot it? And if not, why not? And how do we solve it? How do we defeat it?
Yes.
That's a lot of questions.
Of course I spotted it, but I'm not sure I will formulate it this way. I am a decolonizer. I believe in decolonization. I really think that colonialism is a disgusting way to behave in the rest of the world. Except that the colonial powers of our time are not those who are presented in the academies. It was not, and it still is not, America. It was not, and it is certainly not, Europe, which has done the job of condemning its colonial past. We did the job. France did it. England did it. The real colonial powers of our time are Turkey, dreaming of a new Ottoman Empire, Iran, dreaming of a new Persian Empire, are radical Sunni Islam, dreaming under the banner of sometimes very tiny states like Qatar, of rebuilding the imperialist Ummah. The new colonial powers are China, dreaming of Silk Road being a nickname for empire, and it is of course Russia under Putin, practicing the most brutal and classical colonialism by negating and trying to annihilate the Ukrainian people. So, problem is not colonialism. Colonialism is something which has to be hated. For me, problem is to recognize the true face of colonialism. And what I spotted since the time is that decolonialism is often a mask under which advance the true colonizers of our time. They colonize when they are Putin or Erdogan by addressing the world, while addressing the world with the decolonialism speech. This is a tragic paradox of our time. This twist on the world and on the concept. And of course, the worst is reached with Israel. Israel, which is the fruit of a war of liberation. Israel, which is a rather perfect example of an anti-imperialist war succeeding in 1948. It was a war of independence of a free nation against the declining empire of that time, which was the British, and against the attempt of being an empire, which just failed with Germany. So Israel, which is the fruit of a decolonial work, being treated today as being a colonial...
Settler colonialism. Yeah.
Yes, it is just the world reversed, held under feet. This is the problem of our time.
Yes, and how in our societies in the West do we defeat it? How in our societies, when it is in our media, in our academy, in the academy, how do we defeat it?
By trying to say the truth. I was recently in the United States of America. I made a short but very intense tour of the campuses and the campuses which are the most contaminated by anti-Semitism, coast to coast. And what I did was very simple. I tried to explain to big audiences of American students what colonialism is and why you can address any grievance you want against Israel, but certainly not that it is a colonial state. I tried to explain what genocide is. I'm not an expert on genocide, but I reflected a lot, and I was witness of at least one genocide in Rwanda and an attempt of genocide in Darfur. So I know what is a genocide. So I tried to explain to big halls of students accusing Israel of committing genocide what a genocide is, in fact, and why Israel, again, you can discuss the strategy, the tactics, whatever, but a country which lets humanitarian help to enter, even if it is militarily, if it sounds militarily absurd, a country which let out some ill children to be cured in the Emirates, cannot be a genocide, accused of genocide. And I tried in the same campuses to explain, because this also my old age makes that I know what apartheid is. I know, I was witness at the time of Mandela of what was apartheid in South Africa. Israel, where you have out of the millions, there is 2 million of the citizens of Israel who are Arabs, 20% of the population, which is a huge minority, and they are, of course, but even if it is evident, it's needed to stress the point, they have full citizenship, they have the equal rights to incriminate the states if they want, and so on and so on. So the way to do it is really to take the challenge and to go into campuses and repeat evidences which are no longer evidence.
And how did they react? I mean, you're still here, you're still alive, thank God. But how did it happen? How did it go?
It depends. There was I had in USC Los Angeles a difficult moment. I had in Ann Arbor, Michigan, a difficult moment too. But I accepted the challenge of discussion. There was one of these universities when there was so much protest that I accepted to give 5 minutes to the protesters and 5 minutes for me. And I don't know, for a lot of, I have the feeling that I sort of shaked, if not convinced, some of the people who were in the middle. Yeah. When you recall the conditions in which Israel was born, when you recall it with facts, it's difficult to deny that the embodiment of decolonizing ideology is in the very existence of Israeli people. People understand.
Let me change the vibe here for a second. I think we're all thrilled to have you over here, and we in Britain look to France as the capital of letters and intellectual life, and we would love to know, what is a typical day of Bernard-Henri Levy like? Just describe, what time do you get up? We know you don't sleep, and we know you wave at the Elysee at night and wait for the lights to go on. Just start at dawn. Just give us a day in your life. A typical one.
There is no typical, honestly. It depends if I'm writing, if I'm not writing.
If you're writing.
Well, if I'm writing, it's endless, and I'm devoured by what I do. I'm devoured. I'm literally taken by it. No real other occupation, concerns, or so on. Any writer would tell you, and you know that yourself, when you really write, all your body, all your brain are devoted to that, are a source of the flood of your ink.
How many hours can you, 12 hours, can you?
I don't know. One of the peculiarity of the moments of the life of a writer is that time, you literally don't see time. I know that for ordinary example, if you make some water boil at night at 3 o'clock in the morning because you want to make an egg, for example, you think 3 minutes have passed, you go to your kitchen and you saw everything is burnt, You don't see the time, so you don't even know. I cannot calibrate, I cannot calculate, I can't reply.
And do you have a special study, or do you have many places? Can you write anywhere?
I can write anywhere. I can write walking, and I even write swimming. To be honest. One of my best ways to write is to have a little system of machinery which makes me build my sentences while swimming and to drop them in the machine in the swimming pool when I arrive.
So subterranean writing and recording.
And record, yeah. And honestly, when you are in this moment where your body no longer exists in the water, as you know, the body is very light physically. Then the spirit is nearly detached, nearly untightened from the body, and it works in an incredible speed. And then you have some pearls of your sort of pearls, I don't know who come. So I can work in any conditions when I'm writing.
Yeah, and one thing that fascinates me about you is that in your career you've flown off to Bangladesh, to Kurdistan, to Ukraine, to Libya, to Israel. So how do these trips happen? Is there a moment when you just go, I've just got to go there, I've got to fight this fight? Who do you phone? Who organizes it? How does it happen that you go on these amazing trips?
It depends. Israel, for example, let's speak of one of the last of these moments, October 7th. I heard the news, as I am not a very good Shabbat follower. Saturday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, I saw the news. 10 minutes after, I was looking for a way to fly to Israel. It took me 24 hours. I was like a madman. I really thought that there was no other place in the world where I should be at this moment than in in Sderot, the south of Israel, and I made it. The day after, I found a way to fly to Israel. It was for me an emergency, a necessity, a duty, and an evidence. So this is for October 7. 3 weeks ago, before the Oval Office story, I'm in regular contact with President Zelensky, and again, I knew, I suspected, I felt that something wrong was going on, and I offered, it was like, for me, an evidence for President Zelensky to meet him, to meet. And we met the day before he did fly to Washington. I said that, I recount the story in a recent Wall Street Journal article, a report. I saw him a few hours before. It was the moment where he was still hesitating between going and not going. We spoke of that. He decided finally to go, but with a feeling of great embarrassment. And I don't know, I thought that I had to be here, that I had to be at his side. And when he did fly to Washington, I went on front line on the east of Donbass because I knew that for me, for a friend of freedom and for a Jew, the real place to be was there, against in front, not against. The Ukrainians are against me. I was in front of the colonial forces of Vladimir Putin. I had the evident feeling, a disgusting feeling, that really the fate of Europe was at stake on this border of Ukraine. I feel it since 3 years, since the beginning of the war, and 3 weeks ago, suddenly it struck me, something huge is going to happen. And I went there and I made this story for the Wall Street Journal, which you can find online easily. So it's not a calculation, it's a sort of immediate inner evidence. And then the way to make it is accessory, is not a problem. During the time of the COVID, for example, during the time 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when this craziness happened, this lockout, this blockade of everything because of the COVID. It was an evidence for me suddenly that in spite of the difficulty to fly and to travel, and even because of the impossibility to do, I knew that there were some places of the world where it was not only a plague, but where what was happening was a huge catastrophe in Somalia, in Bangladesh, and I went to these places to make reportages again for the Wall Street Journal and for French newspapers. So it is an evidence. I remember to have taken the decision to go in Mogadishu, in Somalia, where very few reporters went in the last years, in the middle of the COVID crisis, because I got a phone call from a friend in Somalia who told me that the whole country was going to die because of this stupid lockdown of the world economy. Before that, a few months before, I was in New York and I met an old friend from Nigeria, Lagos, who told me about and gave me evidence, proofs of the large scale of massacre of Christians by radical Islamists. He didn't show me, he came to see me, we spent an afternoon, and he did show me evidences of a possible genocide of Christians by the Nigerian wing of Al-Qaeda, which is named Boko Haram, and that the world was silent. Huge scale massacre, nobody taking care. I made a film out of that. The film is called The Will to See. It is available online. And I exactly show in the film how it happened. It is my diary. I see this man, I see the evidences, and for me the last evidence is that I have to go. And I go. And I go, I come very close to these Boko Haram people, and I bring back a story, and I help organizing. It was the first mandate of Donald Trump, the first Donald Trump being in office, and I contribute, I think, to organize a meeting between, what was the name of the foreign affairs advisor of Trump? Anyway, in White House.
Yeah, who was it?
Not Bolton, but the other one. Pompeo.
Oh, Pompeo.
I helped organizing a meeting between Mike Pompeo and a delegate of Christian friends in Nigeria. And for me, it was like a thunderstorm for my head. I had to do that. That's it. And then I find the means.
I so admire your life of adventure. And I think this is the last question, by the way. And I think you have been and are a great champion of freedom, but also someone who is a great champion of Jewishness and how to live as a Jew. And I look back at I wonder if as you look back at your childhood, you were born in Algeria, like me, you're Sephardic, and then you grew up as a little boy in France, in Paris maybe. Are you what you expected you would be? And are you the man you wanted to be? What did you want to be as a little boy?
No, I'm probably not the man I expected. I tell in my last book, in the White Night, Nuit Blanche, I tell how when I was a little boy, my secret play, my secret game in the garden of my parents was to celebrate my own funerals. I made a speech of my funeral. I said that, I recount that in the book. I was 6 or 7 years old, 8 maybe, and I wrote a speech for funeral. And sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I was a champion of sport, sometimes I was a bad politician, sometimes I was a writer, but I was lots. So sometimes I was a rabbi, and I was celebrating the funerals of Rabbi Bernard-Henri, and so I did not know what I was going to be. But, and really, sometimes I took the risk of putting myself in the skin of a bad man also, not always a champion, not always a good man full of virtues and merits. Sometimes I was a dark man, a dark dead man, and the child whom I was celebrating him also. But what I could say is that when I look back today, even if I am not exactly the one I expected to be, I regret nothing. I match with myself. If I have regrets, it is not to have always done as much as I should have done. Is sometimes not to have been persistent enough But consistent, I think I was. Persistent, nobody is enough. When I leave Nigeria, when I know that I will be back in my Parisian home and that those people will remain in the darkness, of course, for me, it's a remorse. When I left Israel at the end of October, just maybe a little later, at the beginning of the counter-offensive, I had to leave because I have a life, of course. I really was not proud of myself. I would have liked to stay more, to be young enough, maybe also to engage myself physically. So, persistent enough? No, never. Because you have to have hundreds of lives to be persistent enough. But consistent, having the feeling to have done what I had to do, yes, I have this feeling. And there is no engagement which I made, no commitments in which I risked myself, which I regret today. I was not, I have never been one of those anti-Israeli leftists, even when I was an extreme leftist. I knew, for example, that the red line was the faithfulness to Israel. I have never been one of those right-wing racists. I have always known that for example, that the battle for enlightened Islam, that the internal battle inside Islam between the radical and the moderate was essential, and that as a man, as a French, and as a Jew, I had to be part of it and to take side in this battle between the Islam of darkness and the Islam of enlightenment. It is not just a matter of them, it's a matter of all of us. So, I have the feeling to have done more or less what had to be done at every moment of my long life, and I hope that enough time remains to continue in the same way.
I hope so too. Bernard-Henri, thank you so much. Lovely to have you.